Anytime a document is being read that was originally intended for a different audience, some distances will have to be negotiated in order to understand what it means. For example, the Constitution of the United States was originally written in the 18th century. Now, the world was a very different place in the 18th century. However, most believe that the Constitution still has relevance for today. So, how do we get from there back to here? Take the Second Amendment, for example. It simply says, and I quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." End quote. Now, what does that mean? Well, the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence will tell you what it means, and the National Rifle Association will tell you what it means. Note that they are both reading the same words, but they disagree radically over what those words mean. What was apparently obvious in the 18th century is not so obvious today. Some distance between there and here must be negotiated in order for the intended meaning to become clear for readers and hearers today. Now, if that was true of a document 200 years old, how much more true is it of a document 2,000 years old? If we're going to understand the Bible today, we're going to have to negotiate some distances to get from there to here. The more important the document, the more important it is to spend the time necessary to interpret it properly. Any number of distances must be negotiated in order to move from the world of the New Testament to our 21st century world. But let me identify four of the most important. Take the distance of time, for example. Biblical people had never heard of computers or space travel. To treat biblical people as though they are exactly the same in every respect as their modern counterparts leads to interpretive distortion, if not outright biblical abuse. Take culture, for example. Luke in Acts says the Mount of Olives was a Sabbath day's journey from Jerusalem. Now, that phrase is meaningless to the non-Jew, the typical modern Christian interpreter, but to the Jew, virtually all first Christians were Jews. That phrase made perfect sense. It was the distance one could travel on the Sabbath without violating the fourth commandment. Or take language. Some things make perfect sense in Greek or Hebrew, but when translated into English become nonsensical. For example, in Matthew chapter 4, verse 5, as typically translated, it says that during Jesus' temptation, the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple. Now, the word picture is that the temple at the time had spires or towers, like a modern Gothic structure, and the devil took Jesus to one of those spires to test him. But Herod's temple had no such Gothic spires. Indeed, the temple of Jesus' day was a rectangular structure of walled courtyards, open-aired without a roof as such. At the corners or wings of the structure were towers, and it is likely to one of those corners, towers, that Matthew refers. The problem is one of translation. The Greek word translated pinnacle is pterigion, from the Greek word wing. That is, the devil took Jesus to one of the wings or corners of the temple, not the pinnacle. To be sure, it was a high precipitous corner of the building from which a fall would likely be fatal, but it was not a Gothic spire. The problem arose when the Latin translation of the Greek New Testament, the Vulgate, translated pterigion by the Latin word pinaculum, and pinaculum came into English as pinnacle. The devil did not take Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple. He took him to the wing or corner of the temple. A poor translation of Matthew's Greek caused the problem. Indeed, if we're going to read Matthew, we're going to have to read Matthew in Greek or trust someone who can, because Matthew did not write in English. Or take geography. The New Testament is so situation-specific that some biblical passages make no sense apart from the particular geography assumed in the passage. For example, in Mark, Jesus says to his disciples, "Have faith in God." Amen, I say to you that Whoever should say to this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and should not doubt in his heart, but should believe that what he says should happen, it will be done for him. Mark 11:22-23. And the commentators speculate about why Jesus should have used the image of moving mountains and casting them into the sea to illustrate faith. Why would anyone want to throw a mountain into the sea? Was it just Oriental hyperbole? No, it was not. Remember that according to Mark, Jesus said this on the way from Bethany to the temple in Jerusalem. The path still walked today by Palm Sunday pilgrims takes you over the Mount of Olives, at the summit of which, on a clear day, you can see both the Herodian to the south and the Dead Sea to the east, with the Temple Mount lying off to the west, directly across the Kidron Valley from you. The Herodian was the tomb of Herod the Great, which Herod had built by excavating one mountain and using the excavated material to build another, his tomb, his Herodian. At the time, it was regarded as such a feat of engineering that it was said of Herod that he could move mountains. And Jesus, standing on the Mount of Olives, looking at Herod's mountain, uses it as an on-site object lesson and says, in effect, to his disciples, you think that's great? Why, that's nothing. If you have faith in God, you can say to Herod's mountain, be taken up and cast into the Dead Sea, and it will be as you've said. Standing in that place, and only in that place, does Jesus' seemingly nonsensical statement suddenly make perfect sense. But the most important distance modern 21st century Gentile Christians must negotiate in order to understand the New Testament properly is the distance that exists between our modern religious context and that of first Christians who emerged from the pages of the New Testament. Christianity was rooted in the soil of first century Judaism, as the New Testament makes absolutely clear. And while most Jews held some things in common, such as the belief in the one true God, the election of Israel as God's chosen people, and the authority of Israel's scripture in the life of God's people, Judaism in the first century was not the singular monolithic religion we 21st century Gentile Christians think it was. Indeed, it was characterized by great vitality and variety, as evidenced by the diversity of religious groups who self-identified as Jews in the first century. One group of first century Jews who figure prominently in the New Testament were the Pharisees, which is what others call them, but not what they call themselves. They refer to themselves as the Perushim, or separatists. We might call them Puritans today because they believed that they were purifying the Jewish religion against the encroachment of paganism in the popular culture. The central idea of their brand of Judaism was holiness, which they understood as separateness. They expressed this separateness in practices and behavior that set them apart, behaviors that included such things as obeying God's special law, the Torah, worshiping on a separate day, Sabbath, carrying a special sign of separateness in their bodies, circumcision, and the kashrut, or kosher laws, eating a separate kind of food, clean or kosher, and avoiding food that was common or unclean, making sure that their hands and pots were washed kosher before eating, and refusing to associate with people who did not observe their laws of clean and unclean, that is, people who were unwashed or unkosher. These were the identity markers of the people of God, the Pharisees believed. The other distinctive of the Pharisees was their belief in the oral law, or what is called in the New Testament, the tradition of the elders. The Pharisees believed that God gave Moses two Torahs at Sinai, a written Torah and an oral Torah, the latter implicit in the former and functioning as a fence, if you will, around the written law to keep you from violating it. For example, the written law says, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. But the Pharisees believed that this written law implicitly included also an oral law that protected the written law from violation. The oral law, as they understood it, was don't work on the Sabbath. If you don't even work on the Sabbath, then you will never violate the written law to remember the Sabbath. By this means, they made the Jewish faith understandable and practical to first century Jews, accounting for their great popularity among ordinary Jews of Jesus' time. Now, the Sadducees' chief interest was to support the temple as the center of Jewish life in Israel. They were the patrician class that realized tremendous profit from the business of religion that gathered around the temple in the first century. Consequently, they supported the priesthood and exercised controlling influence on the Jewish religious high court of the day, the Sanhedrin, chiefly as the mechanism for holding on to their power base. They were not very religious in the sense the Pharisees were. Rather, they used religion to maintain their power and influence. They took a very conservative view of the scripture, unlike the Pharisees with their oral law, whom the Sadducees regarded as the liberals of their day. The Sadducees denied all parts of the Hebrew Bible as scripture except the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. They denied the authority of the other 2 parts, the prophets and the writings. Consequently, they also denied belief in the afterlife and the resurrection, since these views arise chiefly outside the Torah. Not surprisingly, they also denied the liberal Pharisees' belief in the oral law. Like the Sadducees, the Essenes shared a profound belief in and support of the temple in Jerusalem. However, while the Sadducees saw the temple as a political and economic prize, the Essenes believed in the temple for its religious significance as the place where God and man meet. Consequently, the Essenes became disillusioned with the temple and its Sadduceic supporters, believing it to have been corrupted for political and economic purposes. And so they left Jerusalem and withdrew to the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea at a place called Kirbet Qumran. And there they became a reform-minded sect of priests and monks awaiting the coming of Messiah to cleanse the land and to inaugurate the Messianic age. The Essenes are almost universally believed to have been the Jewish group responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls. While the Essenes are never mentioned in the New Testament, they may be alluded to in several places. The Zealots were likely the radical wing of the liberal group, the Pharisees, taking literally the uncompromising insistence on the first commandment, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Hence, when the Romans insisted that Jews pay taxes to a foreign power, using a coin that bore the emperor's graven image on it, these radical Pharisees saw that as idolatry and began to wage an open revolt against the occupation. They also had very strong eschatological views, believing that God would not allow the holy city, Jerusalem, to be trampled underfoot again by pagans, but would send his Messiah to vanquish them. This belief enabled the Zealots at Masada to hold out for 3 years after the fall of Jerusalem. Some zealots not only targeted the Roman occupational army with their guerrilla warfare, but also any Jews who collaborated with the Romans. These zealots were called sicarii, from the Latin word dagger. But there is one more group of first century Jews we need to discuss, a group we 21st century Gentile Christians don't often think of as Jews at all, but they were. Namely, that group of Jesus followers, we'll call them, to distinguish them from other first century Jews. These Jews would later come to be known as followers of the Messiah, or as we refer to them today, Christians. That is the subject of the other presentation in this module.